So, hello, story lovers. Welcome back to African Folktale with Neze. The air that night felt different, heavy with something that I could not explain. The first gunshot rang through the village, marking the start of Adaeze's Ikwe Ezi celebration. The village buzzed with excitement, but Adaeze's smile did not reach her eyes. As my cousin stood in the center of the gathering, her glistering skin shining through the uhier that she applied all over her body, she cradled her udu drum, tapping it softly. She should have been filled with joy, but something wasn't right. The Ikwe Ezi is a compulsory tradition in Mgbidi, Imo State of Nigeria, where virgin maidens are celebrated for reaching womanhood. The event is grand, lasting 2 weeks, filled with songs, dancing, and celebration. These maidens, beautifully adorned in their traditional makeup, will sit in front of their family homes inside their thatched huts, which were built for this occasion. The maidens will welcome guests who come to celebrate with them. These guests will bring gifts and money, several tokens of appreciation, and in turn, the maidens would give them fish and coconuts as part of a special cultural exchange. During this period, the maidens are not allowed to do chores. They are to be well nourished and fed fats. At the end of the 2-week ritual, the maidens would walk to the village river with their breasts uncovered, showing their purity and readiness for marriage. They would dip their feet into the sacred water, a blessing that marks their transition from girls to women, carrying on this tradition of their ancestors. Everyone came to see Adaeze, the perfect maiden, the pride of our family. But that night, as she played her udu and danced, I noticed her eyes kept shifting to the shadows. Something was troubling her. "Are you okay?" I asked in a hushed tone. She smiled, but it didn't comfort me. "I'm fine," she said. But I knew better. There was darkness that she was hiding. The next night, during the Uduego feast, Adaeze's unease only grew. The villagers had gathered with gifts, dry fish, coconuts, and matches. And while they laughed and danced, Adaeze seemed lost in her thoughts. Her fingers trembled as she played her udu, and her eyes were distant. I found her standing alone later that night, away from the crowd. "You are not yourself," I said, watching her closely. "Something is wrong." She did not respond immediately. Instead, she looked into the darkness, her shoulders tense, and after a moment she whispered, "There is something that I can't say." Her voice trembled, and for a second, I thought I saw tears well up in her eyes. I tried to ask some more, but she shook her head, her lips pressed tightly together. "I can't. It's better if I don't." There was heaviness in Adaeze's heart, but I did not know what it was. After day arrived, and it was time for the maidens to visit the river and offer yams to the river goddess, Eazi. This part of the Ikwe Ezi ceremony revealed a maiden's purity, and if any had defiled the culture and lost her purity, the truth will come out. So as we walked to the river, the early morning air was cool against our skin. The maidens, half naked, dipped their feet into the water, offering their yams. Adaeze was the last to step forward, and as soon as she did, the village elders began whispering. There in the light of dawn, the truth became clear. Adaeze's belly was swollen, barely noticeable, but enough to know what it meant. A hush fell over the crowd. The elders stared at her with a mix of shock and disappointment. One elder called her name sharply. Adaeze, what is this that I am seeing? But Adaeze only stood still, her face pale, her eyes wet with tears. She knew what had happened. She knew her fate. She knew that it was an arrow, a big abomination for an Mgbidi girl to get pregnant before performing the Ikwe Ezi rites. Such a person is seen as cursed, and she will face the punishment for that. She will be banished. That evening, when the village gathered for Adaeze's banishment, the air was thick with sorrow as the elders spoke of her shame and her fate. I couldn't stay silent. I pulled Adaeze aside, away from prying eyes. Adaeze, please, you have to tell me the truth. How did this happen? Her body shook with sobs, and after a long silence, she whispered, I didn't want this. It wasn't my choice. My heart sank. I understood immediately. Adaeze had been harmed, but she couldn't bring herself to reveal who did it to her. She was protecting someone, but I didn't know who. In our village, speaking up about these kinds of things could even bring more trouble, especially if the person responsible had influence or power. Why didn't you tell anyone? I asked, feeling helpless. I can't, she whispered. If I say anything, it will ruin everything. Her eyes filled with a mix of fear and resignation. I wanted to scream, to tell the village what had really happened, but I knew that it had to come from Adaeze herself. The burden that she carried was not just the pregnancy, but the weight of a secret too dangerous to reveal. The next day, the village elders pronounced their judgment. Adaeze stood silently in the village square, her head bowed as the elders declared that her feet would never touch Mgbidi's soil again. Not in marriage, not even in death. Adaeze's mother flung herself to the ground and wept. But Adaeze remained still, her eyes hollow. She had chosen silence over the truth, and now she had to live with that decision. Two able-bodied men led her out of the village, and as they did, people spat and sang songs of jeer and swept the ground behind her, erasing her presence and her memory from Mgbidi forever. Years have passed, but the Ikwe Ezi tradition remains law in Mgbidi. Every year, the maidens gather, their chests bare, their feet dipping into the river as they offer yams to the goddess. And every year, the village remembers Adaeze and others like her. Some whisper that the real story was never told. They say that Adaeze's silence wasn't just to protect herself, but to shield someone else, a ruler, a very powerful man who had stolen her virtue. But the village will never know for sure the full truth. The Ikwe Ezi continues, and the river watches, ready to reveal the secrets of those who step into its waters. Dear story lovers, this story is no fiction. It is the reality in the village of Mgbidi, where it remains forbidden for maidens to fall pregnant before Ikwe Ezi. I learned from this story that silence is not always golden, but sometimes we need to voice out. Do tell us what you've learned from this story and share with us down in the comment section strange or peculiar cultures and practices that is common in your place. Thank you so much for watching. If you're new here, you're hearing our voice and our stories for the first time, don't forget to hit the subscribe button, give this video a big thumbs up, drop all your comments down in the comment section, and stay glued for our next story. It's African Folktale with Adaeze, and I'll see you guys in my next one. Bye.